Welcome back to Caffeine Confessionals. My name is Allan and We are here to talk about the Challenge Battle of the Eras, Episode 10. I'm joined by my lovely Southern co-host, Luke Muncie.
What's up, guys?
Unfortunately, our lovely Vermontian co-host, Zoe Chimboli, is not with us this week. She'll be back with us next week. But we had ourselves, I think, the best episode we've had in probably over a month now. The game went individual. We've been saying we need a shakeup, and I guess this is what it needed to be.
Yeah, big fan. And I say this all the time, but I watch the episodes. I'm like, oh, I love that. But just because I love the show, I was actively watching this episode like, oh, this is good. So yeah, I'm fully back on track.
And so last week, one of the things we were really worried about was that if the game would move from having two people getting eliminated every week to male, female, one person eliminated, and that happened, and yet we still loved the episode, which I think it's like credit to them. Like they still found ways to make it interesting, and we'll talk about later. There are some format things that are going to make it, you can't just completely coast in the game, even if it's not your elimination day.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess we'll talk about that at the daily. But I did like those few. There were lots of little things that I think are going to pop up throughout this that helped calm some of the concerns I had about the episodes going forward. So yeah, I feel good about it.
So coming out of last week, Devin got eliminated. And so often when players get eliminated, it's the cliche thing to say, oh, the season isn't going to be the same without them. Oh, their loss is going to be incredibly felt. With Devin, it was actually true because I'd say he was more important this episode than any episode he was actually on the season. And he got in some drama some episodes this season. Because throughout the episode, they pulled out these cardboard cutouts of Devin, edited in, threw in his little commentary at points, and it was like CT Pro Tips almost, but like on the Devin scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not one of her talking points, but it ties in perfectly. Whoever edited this episode had a lot of fun. There were like a lot of random, just like things thrown in and out. But yeah, Devin's importance of this episode. Like I almost asked Allan if I could put Devin in the thumbnail because it just would be funny. But also, if Tori wasn't in this episode, this would be Devin's episode.
It was big because we come out of it and like Tori, who I would say has sold multiple friends down the river in the past or just turned a blind eye. This loss of Devin like fueled her, fired her, and she's just like so anti-bananas at this point for the way he's played the game. You see Michele, she tries to play it off like, oh, he took the bad side of the bed, but she's clearly shaken up by it. And then the Vacation Alliance doesn't really feel like an alliance without Devin.
It doesn't, and I would have never expected him to be the glue to this. And in some ways, I hate to say this, like maybe it like forced the storyline, but I do think to Tori, he is the most integral piece to her puzzle. For Josh, it might have been Casey, but like Devin's impact in the way that he has made different connections and had the connection with Michele, like he was definitely the glue to whatever was happening on this season.
You think about their win together on Ride or Dies, and Tori was a mess throughout that season with all the Jordan stuff. And for that season, Devin kept like under the radar. He was the one who really kept her stable, and they killed that final together. So he is such a big part of her game. So maybe like credit to him, because I do think a lot of people even say that Tori carried him at times. But like, no, they were an equal partnerships thing, and they worked together really well. Tori, man, like it's interesting to have like a good storyline for once. Like, finally.
This has been the most pro Tori I've been since Dirty 30. Like I actively do not like Tori for many reasons that I won't bring up, but like, and they're not anything heinous. It's just like personal preference. But this episode, I genuinely several times throughout thought, wow, she's playing a good game. Wow, she knows how to do this TV thing. And also like, this is why she keeps getting called back. So yeah, if anything, Devin leaving, A, huge loss, but B, propels Tori to do something other than just sit by and watch and get to the end inevitably. So I'm excited.
I'm excited too. We also got our first individual daily challenge coming before we get there. Going into the daily challenge, color jerseys are gone. Everyone's wearing all black now. What do you think about the color switch up?
Okay, so that visual, I was like, okay, we're on a challenge season. Not that I think this is just because of the last few seasons we've been in flux with just the same monotone jersey. But something about seeing them all there made them not seem so separate anymore. Because they're like, I don't know. I'm a big fan.
I like it too, because here's the thing. I think I'm always someone who always I want colorful jerseys. I want colorful jerseys. I think it's cool seeing all different players. You know, it is almost like when you cheer on a team, having like a player you love and having that color, you just identify with it a bit. But seeing them like hit this point in the game where it's the 40th season, the game has gotten serious now. Like we're gonna crown a winner pretty soon. Seeing the sleek all black, there's something distinguished about it that I really like. And I don't know if you're a Hell's Kitchen fan at all, but in Hell's Kitchen, when it gets to individual, like because they go from two teams to like individual type thing, they go from wearing like red and blue smocks to having black smocks, and it's like this is when you're like part of the elite. This is like
Yeah.
I also do love too that everyone has their jerseys customized too, where like some people have cut them off, some people have gotten them small, some people have the no sleeve, some people have the sleeve jerseys.
Yeah. I like it, and I like still that like I don't think they wore helmets on this episode necessarily, but in like the previews for future weeks, they are still wearing their colored helmets, which I think is still a cool little thing. But I'm just a big fan. It helps break up the monotony.
Yeah. And we get to the daily challenge. We know that Bananas, Ryan, Derek, and then Jenny, Aviv, and female Aviv are the targets theoretically. But TJ tells them, I'm going to flip a coin and it's going to tell you whether it's a male or female day, which very simple way to do it. Flips the coin, male elimination day, women are safe now.
Yeah. Which I was really okay. I'm so curious what would have happened had the alternative. Well, what would have happened is Michele probably would have went home. But I don't know. I like that he actively flipped the coin in front of us, and it did instead of just being like it's a God's day and made Common put his foot in his mouth for nothing. It was like, okay, what could have gone either way. It sets the tone for the rest of the season. So I don't hate it.
Yeah, so on top of that, there's also the detail that if you are the last place woman, even though it's not a woman's day, uh, you will get a penalty in the next daily challenge, which could likely put you into elimination because you're going to have a disadvantage and you come in last because the assumption is last place goes into elimination, which is going to be the truth. So even though we have the three male targets, if you come in last on the male side, you're going into elimination, and then one of those three targets will be the person going against that person. Uh, for the men, if you win the daily challenge, you basically just get safety, just a free immunity. Women, though, as TJ said, if there's a stalemate between the men and women who win the daily challenge, the woman has the tiebreaker. So the woman is controlling the man's game for voting wise.
Yeah, so the woman just gets the vote anyways, which is fine. And we get more specifics later that we'll talk about. But I do like that last place will immediately go in, and that's not just on the three targets. However, it might be a smarter game to get second, so you're not having to make these calls. I don't know.
Yeah, many people get immunity in this format, but first place gets the guaranteed immunity. And we'll talk more about how like the positive of coming first will affect your game. The daily challenge though was very intense in large part because of the heat. So this daily challenge was they had a trebuchet of giant catapult that shot out balls into an empty field. Players had to run across the field, up and downhill, grab as many balls as they can, put them in a tube, or they could only grab two balls at a time. I think that was the limit, and then put them in a tube over on their side. Once they fill up their tube, they then would try to solve a puzzle. First player to get it done wins the daily challenge. Last place goes directly into elimination on the men's side. Women are also just playing, as we mentioned, for power and not getting disadvantage from next week. Because of the heat, this daily challenge was kicking everyone's ass, and I loved it. It just felt like a final type competition where it's telling you like who are the real threats in the game.
Yeah. Well, and also it's a nice reminder that some of you are not as in good of shape as you think you are, especially for the Heat. Despite last week's episode having TJ being like, "Hey, next time you see me, it won't be so green," so it like foreshadows maybe they're changing locations to somewhere colder. However, I did like that there was an extra element of, "Hey, holy balls, it's hot as balls," and you gotta recover from that as you're actively working.
it was just like it reminded me of Exodus 2, that one challenge where they ran up and down the mountain type stuff, and you could really see like which teams are cut out to win the final and which teams aren't. And let's talk about the men's side first, I guess. Jordan, as expected, crushing it because he was just running nonstop, and even got some accidental help from Johnny Bananas, who put two balls in Jordan's tube. And here's the thing: you're gonna say like, you think he threw it? But the only reason I think not is because Bananas is a target.
Yeah. You might have just said this, and they may have said this. If Bananas had won the daily, did that then make him safe?
It probably would have. Yeah, he would have been safe in that scenario.
Yeah, so fair. I do think it was a mistake just because we saw other people make mistakes.
Yeah, we saw, including Ryan was the first person to make the mistake, and he put it in Laurel of all people's too, and Laurel yelling in the background like, "You can't take that back." Um, but yeah, we had Bananas put it in Jordan's, and he was just like, he was definitely mad at himself because he was in it to win, and also like not to come in last place too. It's like, come in last place, you're going directly in. So Jordan was crushing it, and then the two other men that really impressed me physically were Kylan, who was going up and down like nothing, and then Josh was an absolute horse. Um, Came down to a puzzle though too as well.
Yeah. Which is great. I think it levels the playing field. Uh, not a difficult puzzle for most. It shouldn't have been. And I understand the heat takes a toll as well. Where should we start?
So let's say this: Jordan wins on the male side. Kylan, I think, is in second, and Josh took a long time at the puzzle. Josh took like, I think, because Josh, I think, might have been the second person done with the physical aspect of it. He came in third overall, for the men. But that was like, from a physical standpoint, Josh has really put in so much work. Like he's the epitome of like heart and fitness at this point, but he still just doesn't have the actual puzzle skills to win.
Yeah. And I'm not saying he did this on purpose because I know he didn't, but this was probably the best week for Josh not to have any power. Like he just needs to kind of lay low a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jordan winning is no surprise. Kylan being a threat is no surprise. From there, I believe it was some combination of Bananas, Theo, Corey, as you'd expect. At the bottom, though, it came down to Derek and Ryan. And I'll say this: something I noticed during the daily challenge is that Derek has a busted knee.
Yeah.
Like because Derek is a pretty quick guy. We've seen him like do well in some cardio challenges. I saw him running, and his knee is all bandaged up. He must have gotten an injury during an earlier daily challenge this season. Ryan did surprisingly well in the physical aspect of this challenge. As we saw, though, he did not know that the puzzle had another side, and you're supposed to put the number 40.
Which I can't remember whose confession it was, but like, whoa, what are the odds that all your pieces would be upside down? Because he solved the puzzle fairly quickly, but like, how do you not look slash see? But what's most intriguing to me though is like, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit, knowing how the episode turns out. Like, had Ryan not been the person sent to elimination, he probably would have been safe from elimination. So, like, that's a huge mistake on his part.
Yeah, Derek went out big time by just the fact that Ryan. I mean, CT pro tip: look at all the sides of your puzzle pieces. That's the like. And he just didn't do that even after he was probably there for 20, 30 minutes. Uh, this is why Ryan is statistically one of the worst daily challenge competitors ever. Because it's just like, it's not just that he's not like a big physical threat, but he's like mentally just doesn't have the instincts that a challenger needs.
Yeah.
And at what point do you just not back up and look at other people's puzzles and be like, oh hey, that looks like a number? Not even like fully cheat off them, be like, oh, that looks like something much different from what I have.
I think you do it the second that your puzzle is completely in there and you're told that it's wrong. Well, at that point, what would you do? I'd be like, oh shit, it's upside down. Has to be.
To solve a puzzle literally backwards, upside down is like ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's harder than what he did, but still. It's just such a simple fix would have had him out of elimination and would have completely changed this game. Derek looks out big time. On the women's side, though, Tori crushed this shit. Like Tori won this daily challenge both from a physical and a mental standpoint, where I think she solved her puzzle before anyone was even like doing the puzzle aspect.
We've talked about it the past couple weeks, and I consistently look out for whose edit is showing that they could possibly win. If there were, and I've said Tori the past couple weeks, this episode, if you're not thinking that Tori is the best woman in the game at this point, you are mistaken. Like Laurel fans, Cara fans might have their beef with one another, but like you cannot say that Laurel and Cara are the best women in the game right now.
I completely agree. When Tori was on the team that was like consistently doing well in the daily challenges, would have won more if they didn't throw some. Looking at Jordan there, but like she kills this daily challenge here. And I mean, last week when we were talking about like there's like 5 women contenders, and Tori kind of gets slipped on a bit. This week shows you, like as you're saying, she should be viewed as the top contender. She's in the prime of her challenge career, and yeah, if I'm other women in the game, I'd be scared. I mean, even Tori kind of like alluded to being like a little worried of having to face Tori in elimination theoretically.
Who's this?
Laurel last week.
Oh, Laurel.
Yeah, because she was like, I don't like the idea of having to face Tori.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Tori later on, which this isn't ruining anything for the future of this podcast, but Tori even says, I want to be on that same Mount Rushmore that some of these women are. And as much as I do have disdain for her, like I think 10 years from now, we will look back and be like, well, she's probably up there.
Second place, though, Cara Maria. Very strong second place, it seemed like. But even Cara was like, damn, Tori.
Damn. Yeah.
Because we saw on like Challenge All Stars 4 where there was that opening daily challenge where Cara just set the pace in front of everyone. And this was kind of a similar-ish challenge where it's like run up and down, do the puzzle. And so Cara's like, I'm good at this stuff, and you just like pretty cleanly beat me.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the top 5 was, I think, as we'd expect. I believe it was Laurel, then Jenny, then Rachel, or it might have been Jenny, then Laurel. But it's the top 5 we said last week. They're the top 5 contenders.
Right.
6th was Aviv, which I don't know if I will say that as expected, but she did pretty damn well for this competition.
Yeah.
Considering the 5 women she's going up against and coming right behind them, that's like not bad at all.
Yeah.
Bottom 3, though, was expected because, I mean, we had Olivia, Naya, and Michele, and we talked last week about how, like, Olivia and Naya specifically, it's like, I can't believe you're still here. You've almost been, like, forgotten by the edit. Like, competitively, you're not on the level of these women. And this week, this was their time to maybe show, hey, you're sleeping on me, and instead they just proved the haters right.
Yeah. And I had to think, like, we were getting 2 different edits of women here. Either you're a beast or you are hooking up with someone. Both very entertaining, but I'm like, damn, I wish somebody could be both. And we've seen both before, but on this season, it's just not happening. I will say I was shocked with how Michele did, just because the puzzle aspect, I truly thought she would dominate. Of course, she didn't, but
Yeah, and she finished like the physical aspect earlier than I expected, but she hit that mental wall like literally. Just couldn't do the puzzle, and even she said like this is the first time she's seen a puzzle, and she can't even physically picture it.
yeah.
I think Olivia comes in 7th, or Olivia and Naya come in 7th or 8th in some collection, and Michele comes in last. So Michelle's getting a penalty next week. Not a great showing, especially after losing Devin last week, and then she literally just crumbles to the ground, heat exhaustion, but also just like mental exhaustion. They take her into the medical truck. Olivia joins her, and we got a very like raw, authentic moment where Michele says, "I don't think I can win this show. Like everyone here is so fit, athletic. They play sports. Like even though I try my best, there's no way I can win this show. I should just went home weeks ago." And I felt so bad for her because it felt like she was saying a lot of things that people will comment online, and she just tries her best, but like They didn't edit out this moment. This feels like a moment that you typically edit out of an episode. Instead, MTV like let it run.
So speaking of edits, during this point, I thought, whoa, wouldn't it be crazy if Michele won this season? Because like there have been many instances where she's been underdog, and she says she's got to find a way to make it to the end, or she feels like she had a target from the beginning. And to say, I thought that when I first came on the show, I was excited about the social aspect. I wanted to play a good social game and make it to the end. And we talked about on 39 last season, she got pretty damn close. I mean, she got right up to it, and she probably could have won that final. I think Michele could possibly be a final threat if she can make it past the dailies and the eliminations that are so physically, in some instances, taxing or burdensome. But them leaving this in here was very interesting because Michele won Survivor. No thanks to her
Yeah.
physicality. She's a great social player. Aubrey Bracco fans, back off. I don't care. But like I did love this moment, and it reminded me of why people liked Olivia so much on Ride or Dies, because she can be genuine and authentic and really caring. And I still think she was on 39 aside from her one blunder, but that one blunder is probably going to cost her fans for the rest of her tenure on the show.
I was just taken aback because we don't get these like authentic moments on TV a ton. And you're talking about Survivor too. Like this reminds me a little bit of Winners at War, where like everything was just not going Michelle's way. It was just every week she was on the wrong side of the votes, and yet she kept surviving. And she didn't win, but she got to the final tribal council, like really on her own. So if we can get that type of like storyline for her, I mean, even just make a final amongst this stack cast, I thought she'd be the first boot, or like one of the first boots, especially like after the way those mercenaries came in last season.
I thought she would be the first boot. Honest to God, her winning that first daily, the invitational, probably cemented that Michelle's here, because otherwise, I don't think she would be.
Yeah, I mean, you lose that first one, you get thrown into a hall brawl, most likely. And even if you, like, obviously Nerys didn't beat Olivia, but I think Nerys would probably stand a decent chance against Michele because they got pretty similar builds.
Yeah.
Uh, really good TV moment, though, because it just caught me off guard. Tori and Jordan, power couple with the win. Michele, last place, going to have a penalty going into next week. And Ryan going directly into elimination, which means only two options on the table, Bananas and Derek. And as we know, the woman has the power in this scenario. So Bananas is on full Bananas mode, and he says, I'm not going to beg Tori to vote me into elimination. I'm going to threaten her to vote me into elimination and try to deal with the repercussions of it.
And this probably could have worked if Tori didn't have numbers. Like, and it probably would have worked if Tori were a rookie. And it actually might not have, because Tori's rookie season, like, I felt like she stood up to some people. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It just was the wrong approach.
Tori's got gusto. I mean, she turncoated before Jordan did on World of Worlds 2. She was the first person to make that switch to Team UK. When Tori is like when Tori play, actually, I think Tori's at her best and her strongest when she's almost like is in the minority numbers.
Yeah.
Because when she plays like that scared game that's really easy to pick at, when she crumbled in that elimination on Total Madness, like that was a bad position for her. But when she was on World of Worlds 2, like fighting for herself, when she was on USA 2, fighting for herself, it's when she thrived. And in this moment with Bananas, like he's threatening her, and she's like not biting back. She's like, all right, I will throw you in. Even if like throwing you in against Ryan, because Bananas is right, like you throw me in against Ryan, I'm most likely winning that elimination. And you look at Ryan's face, he's like, he kind of knows it too.
Mm-hmm. It just is really interesting to see like the two people most adored by production currently going against each other. Because I don't think Tori's worried about if she goes against Bananas that production might do something shady to rig her out. Like she knows her value to the show as well. And this doesn't seem contrived. There's genuine emotion here, but she does not need to keep Bananas around or to appease him.
No, she does not. Jordan is also just put in the middle of this situation too, where obviously him and Tori are forever bond together. Him and Bananas have an interesting relationship where they don't go, they're friends, they're allies, they don't go after each other, but there is almost when other people talk to them, they support the idea of going after each other, but they never directly go at each other. So,
Yeah.
And Bananas almost asked like Jordan, "What are you going to do?" And Jordan's like, "Well, it's her vote still."
Right. Well, and also he too does not have to appease Bananas because Bananas has no real say over Jordan's position.
Something I did not like about Tori throughout this episode, though, is there are moments where she'll say her reasoning for voting in Bananas, and Bananas even calls her out, like, "Oh, so this is why you're voting me in now. This is like what you're doing." It's like, "Oh, when he did this with Devin, when he did this in the game, or I want this person, or like Ryan wanted Bananas." She'll say that. Um, just have one consistent reason. That's all I ask for.
Yes, and I agree. I thought of this earlier today too. I wish that she had just said, "You went against my best friend, and by virtue, you went against me as well." Because she never followed through with that at the end. That like you went against Devin's game, which is innately my game. And Bananas being like, "Well, Devin was going against me." All that we saw as viewers was Devin being like, "Yeah, eventually people are gonna go against you." Like, duh, you've won the show 7 times. So I agree. I wish she had a backbone for sure, but I wish that backbone never wavered.
Let's move into something real quick, and that is Bananas Angels, um, which got mentioned throughout the episode. Because their newest member is Rachel, and I mean, coming into the show, if like Rachel for a decade, both she hated Bananas on the island, and then for a decade on Twitter, she shit on Bananas and said, "If I come back to the show, I don't want to ever do it with Bananas. I don't want to ever, I'll go after him," type stuff. Now she's closely aligned with him and his ladies, which are Laurel, Jenny, and Aviv. Um, it's a pretty intimidating group of like ladies as an alliance, though.
It is, and I'm gonna sound like a huge hypocrite here. Stop naming your alliances. I loved Lavender Ladies. I think the Young Bucks are funny because they were young when they made these, and it was whatever. Bananas, Angels, gross. The same thing with Rachel. I have the same concerns with. I guarantee that it's purely just game, as I'm sure you do as well. But it's like, ugh. I like Cara Maria's confession where she's like, "It seems like Bananas, Angels, and Rachel as a CEO who makes her own decisions." But like, I guess it's a way to downplay her strength. It was very strange and it felt like it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm disappointed because Rachel ended up on a team of one by herself. So for
Right.
her to create allies and now be in a position where, hey, like, look, those other three ladies were the ones that got targets on them. Oh no, wait, Rachel was the one who got targeted. Never mind, I'm lying. Uh, but even then, it's just a factor of, it's good to have some allies. Did I wish it for it to be Bananas? No, I wanted to see Rachel take down Bananas after 10 years of talking about it online. Instead, they're buddy buddy now. They're doing podcasts. They're BFFs in Florida. Um, we're living in a timeline that I didn't expect.
Yeah, and I like Rachel a whole lot, but she has been very pro production, pro the show, pro downing other cast members for even speaking about minor inconveniences. So it feels a little icky, but you know, who knows? Maybe she is like, "Hey, I can do this, and it's a nice little paycheck, and I'll kiss the hand that feeds me."
It's great for them because I mean, Bananas has a big target on him. So if he goes into elimination, as we saw this episode, if he wins, those four ladies are safe. Um, if he doesn't win, though, they are very easy to target. But still, it's a very strong alliance to have. And if you're Bananas, like those women are likely winning eliminations too, so they'll probably save him.
Yeah, and I guess realistically, she knows she has Josh. She doesn't have to work on him. She doesn't have Theo. She doesn't have Kylan because they've got girls ahead of her. She knows she's got Derek and Ryan. So she really should be working on Jordan, which we'll talk about later. But
Yeah,
like,
we can do it right now actually, because I think that's smart to do. Right, she like Rachel and Jordan were breaking bread this episode because they kind of didn't know where they stood with each other. Like, are we targeting each other or are we going to be allies? And if those two are allies, like those are two really good. I mean, we know especially with Jordan having so many women on her side, like, and just being Jordan, this season could be easy money for him.
correct. And this leads me to think because Rachel has the people on lock that she has. She has her discussion with Jordan that's very rational. It makes me think that her being in Bananas Angels is a way to, stroke his ego and make him feel like she's got him above everybody else because she knows with Jordan, she wouldn't have to do that. With Ryan, Derek, Josh, she wouldn't have to do that. So I can see the gameplay here. What makes me really feel like she does not care about Bananas, though, is the conversation she has with Tori. And this is what solidified this episode that Tori is really good at this game. The way that Tori handled her relationship, her conversations in that bar, I was like, whoa. She made sure that her and Rachel were good, which they have relationships prior to the season, but we've not really seen them happening here. And they basically say, like, we can control the men from opposite sides to keep one another safe. And Tori even asks, would you be upset? Would you still work with me if I threw Bananas in? And she's like, oh, absolutely. Like, to Rachel, he is but just a number.
And Tori also acknowledged, like, hey, I'll also still be mad at Rachel a little bit, but at the end of the day, she's not the one voting me into elimination.
Yeah.
Now, before Tori also voted, this a detail I forgot to add, probably should talk about earlier. Before Tori even voted Bananas into elimination, which it's obvious she does, we'll get into it later. She asked the guys around the house, like, hey, do you support me voting Bananas in elimination? And it was like a room with like 6 guys in it, and they were all like, yeah, do that. That sounds great. Take the shot, Tori, because she wanted their support. I was so surprised how many people were in that room just asking, like, do you guys want me to vote in Bananas?
And it was so rich of Josh of all people being like, now is the time. And it's like, you dummy, you had the chance weeks ago when he probably could have lost to an opponent and you chose not to. But it was a funny visual. And Jordan even commented, like, of course we're going to say yes. Like, hello?
Talking about other types of gameplay, we also talk about naming alliances. You got the Ladies of Leisure, which is Olivia, Naya, Michele, Derek, and Ryan. And let me tell you, if they had like named this alliance in week 2, or they introduced us to it in like week 2, week 3, really funny, really good. Like, oh, look at how they're staying throughout the game. We're at the serious point of the game now, and we're like introducing the idea of this alliance that you're like not good at the game, and I just can't take you seriously because right now I'm thinking about who's gonna win.
Right. And I'm like, was this formed earlier with a name and we just are now hearing about it? Or with Bananas Angels, are you forcing this too? I don't know. Ugh.
It's and like it's so weird because we as a podcast, we love fun, we love hookups, we love drama, we love people who go and try to vibe for the show. But you get to episode 10 and it's just like being bad at the challenge isn't funny anymore when you get the final around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. This would have been funny episode 2. I think naturally right now we might have skipped over this too, but I know we said we want to speak about it. Cara Maria. I think that Cara Maria I think she's intelligent. I always have. I think she knows when to play victim, when not to, when to be a hero, when to be a villain. But she's very perceptive of her role on this show. And this is the Tori episode. The thumbnail is Tori. I don't think anybody can dispute that this is Tori's episode. Cara said, I've been away from the show for several years, and Tori has flawlessly taken my place, and she's still doing it, which I thought was a very interesting thing for her to say, to acknowledge that, like, hey, I'm not involved in these alliances, these problems, these fights, these storylines. Tori's still doing it better than I am.
It's such a fourth wall breaking moment too, to acknowledge like I was the face of the show. Tori has been the face of the show for 3 years. And now after being friends with Bananas, she's the one who's rivals with him. She's the rivalry Bananas has. And because we're talking about the Ladies of Leisure, we're talking about Vacation Lands, we're talking about Bananas Angels, and Cara isn't a part of any of those things. She's just off in her own world. Even her rivalry with Laurel has subdued.
Yeah, and Rachel says to her, how does it feel for probably the first time to be involved in nothing in the house ever? And Cara's like, it's nice, but you can tell that she's kind of like, what do I do? Because Cara knows that screen time matters. She knows.
Yeah, Cara's never in this position. She's either the underdog or the top dog. And now because there's like this targeting format where people are going after 3 people and they're like going after the same type of people because of the way the alliance lines are drawn. She's just Switzerland out of nowhere. She does still have disdain for Bananas, though. I think that is clear throughout this episode because she's mad that Rachel is like buddy, like she's disappointed because she was like us, the fans, who's acknowledging like Tori took her spot on the face, but like, hey, you and Bananas are supposed to be rivals. This is supposed to be like 10 years of animosity coming to a head. Nope, you're with him now, and you're with Laurel, and you're disappointing me. And Tori is in my spot. Like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. I think this will transition well into her still being underdog, which is where she thrives, because she's not in either group.
Yeah, and so we talked about when the whole Laurel stuff went down, there was that podcast you did with Johnny Bananas while they were
Yeah.
filming this season. And I think I assumed that they would be aligned at this point because they filmed the podcast, but nope, they're not on the same page like that. But almost I am happy that they could record a podcast and still resume game at least because it would have felt weird if they recorded a podcast and then they would have had a podcast alliance from then on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we did see conversations, but you're right. You can see the look on her face. She's like, ugh, I don't want to work with you.
If they just like Cara though, like coast by these next few weeks though, and not have a target on her, could very easily be a Cara win season because like we're getting so close to that final.
For sure. I am thankful though, since we're on the Cara topic. All Stars 4 was Cara's season. Laurel won. I mean, it was the Cara Laurel season, not to take away from Laurel, but like it was Cara's underdog. She's a fighter, and then she lost, and it felt like, well, the season's a wash to a lot of people, not everybody. I'm really thankful this doesn't feel like the Cara season again.
Those first 4 weeks of podcasting we did for this season, it felt like, all right, here's the sequel. So right. I'm glad we moved on. I think we've had our best episode in weeks this week.
I think it's a testament to better casting. I'm not going to say good casting, but better, because there's still some people we could go back and forth about who should have been there. But yeah, her fourth wall break moment was nice, much like the Michele and Olivia one. It's like the editors are getting people want to see these other aspects aside from just the brawn.
Yep. You want to move into the elimination?
Yes.
Elimination was, I'd say that fun. It was a fun elimination. You basically played what's the name of this childhood game? It's basically you're playing a childhood game where you run. You're playing a version of tag where you're trying to you have to run around and tag someone on the back. Except they're doing it in little go-karts, little four-wheel all-terrain vehicles through this little tiny obstacle course that's hay around them, and it just seems like a fun daily challenge to play in.
Yeah, they do it often on Survivor with groups where they have the sandbags, and like if you're out, you have to give your sandbag to somebody else, and the group dwindles. I thought it was fun, and also Bananas, Ryan are going in total equalizer. Like as much as Bananas is their goat, maybe not ours, he is often thrown into eliminations that he can lose.
Yeah, they throw him some of the weirdest stuff ever. I thought this elimination was done the second I saw it because I know Ryan's from New York and he probably doesn't drive often, which they acknowledge like immediately. And I'm like, Bananas is from SoCal. As a person who's also from Southern California, I can tell you our freeways are the most insane shit ever. So like our driving is just built like people come into our area like what and like they get on the freeway and like why do Californians drive like that? Because it's just, we live in a crazy area. So I thought Bananas was gonna crush him. He's also probably like as like Bananas said, like I've driven ATVs like hundreds of times from doing hundreds of shows type stuff.
Yeah. And the elimination was the only like downside I think of this episode for me, just because I don't know, it was fun, but Ryan just sucked at it. Well, he didn't, but then he did, and it was like, what are you doing?
First round goes. Bananas is playing it safe with all his turns. He's like, I'm gonna go wide because my biggest fear is to like crash out, which is Ryan's going a little bit faster, but then he crashes out because he's not so good at driving. He falls apart. Bananas comes and takes his first flag. Round 2 starts, and Bananas is literally like putting on a show, going woo type stuff throughout the elimination of like that's how non-seriously he's taking it. Ryan at one point gets within striking distance of Bananas, crashes out, falls apart, misses the flag, and then Bananas takes advantage of it, wins the elimination. It was almost close to being a tie, but it was never actually a tie.
Right.
Bananas wins the elimination. I think we all expected it. Throughout the elimination, we got each of their own stories of why they're playing for their dad, who are both Vietnam War veterans. That was like very emotional and deep, and then we had the silly Mario Kart aspect in between. So it was a weird dynamic.
Yeah, quite the juxtaposition. I did like that they both had that commonality. Yeah, I'm not like a super sentimental person, so to me it was like, okay, sorry, that sounds so messed up, but like you're playing the challenge, you're not like doing something honorable, I guess. But I'll just stop. I'm rambling, and I shouldn't. It was a very sweet moment for both of them.
Yeah, it's also too like you knew Ryan was losing also in this moment,
Right.
because Bananas is just a better player. Ryan crashed out.
And if anything, because this was Ryan's last episode, what a great way to honor his dad.
Yeah, Bananas wins the elimination.
I was being
Ryan.
serious, by the way.
No, I know. I know
I just don't want people to be like, wow, what an asshole. I was being serious. Like, he got to put his dad's story out there, hear that his dad struggled with abuse, like drug abuse, substance abuse, and sexuality. Like, that's cool. That's not cool that he did that, but that's a story that Ryan can share and try to, like, still talk positively about his father after his death. But yes, Banana won.
Bananas wins. Ryan made it. I mean, he made it 11 places farther on the men's side than I expected this season. So
yeah,
I mean, good for him for getting this far. Bananas wins, and the expectation is he gets to pick 3 targets. And because Tori voted him in, everyone assumes he's like ready to put Tori into, up for elimination. TJ drops the information though. You win the daily challenge, you can't be put up for target. So you can't just get immediate revenge, which I think that's great because I don't want to de-incentivize people in power from being able to make power moves.
completely. And I know there are going to be people who are like, oh, production's rigging for Tori. All season, you couldn't put the previous targets in, which isn't the exact same, but like, this is a nice rule and incentivizes the opposite sex winning on their day because they're then safe the next. And like you said, they can then have the mobility to make that move.
So not only that, it's like you win the daily challenge now, and you get safety basically for 2 days. As long as you don't come in last in the next one, you're winning 2 safeties, which is a very fair thing to win. If you come in first out of 9 people, if you come in first out of 8 people, that is a power you should get in the game. That is a right you should get. So it's not like she coasted to it. Like Tori, I mean, if you watch the daily challenge, Tori undeniably earned that power.
Yeah, so she'll at least be on 3 more episodes. Like,
and if you win elimination, you get some powers too. It's like there's ins and outs to it all. I loved though, like because I didn't like, as you were saying before, when Tori was kind of changing her reasoning of why she's voting in Bananas. I loved it. Like my favorite part of the episode is when TJ told them that information, because I think the biggest criticism of Tori is that she's fake. Biggest criticism of Bananas, he's inauthentic. Their reaction at this moment, authentic. She was cursing him out. She was throwing herself a little party. She was having fun with it. He was angry. He was visibly upset. And that's what we love. We love raw, authentic reality TV.
Yes, I agree. I definitely agree.
When you get these 2 power players, like these 2 people who are supposed to be important, like being real and and playing their best games, like she won the daily challenge, he won the elimination, they're at odds. This is what makes you love the challenge, man.
Yeah. I will say there are 2 things I would change, and I'll be brief here. I still wish it were a double, just for the sake of our pacing. I understand that MTV orders a specific amount of episodes. I have to deal with it. I do like the drama that this has created. However, I do wish the women were in control of the women's fate and the men, the men's, only because this incentivizes the strong brawny players to stay in the game, which is great. But that's because they're people that are good to run a final with. I love seeing a good layup. I love seeing, saving some of the weak people to the end, because that's how we do get some good underdog stories of people like that winning the show. This directly makes the women want to save Bananas and Jordan, and the men save pretty much everybody except for who Bananas targets.
it's so that I agree with you in part. I think in a lot of seasons where, especially like Vendettas is the season I hate the most because the men basically decided who the women were going to that final because the men controlled all the troikas, and so they were just thinking about who do I want to run the final with. Hilariously, that resulted in Cara and Maria beating all their butts without winning a daily challenge all season.
Yeah.
But it's a unique case because as we saw, Bananas he targeted Michele, Naya, and Olivia. And he did so because those are Tori's and Devin's allies. Naya was the person kind of thrown into this situation where she probably wouldn't have been otherwise. If Tori had been up, it would have probably been Tori, Olivia, Michele.
Yeah.
But because of Naya's connection to Michele, Olivia, who are Devin's allies, they get put up. I think in another format though, it would kind of be all over the place of like who they nominate. Instead, Bananas is going after Devin and Tori's people. So
Yeah.
we could see. I think we're going to see more powerful women get shots taken at them as the weeks go.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about those targets though, because we got the three women who are not contender or big contenders in this game at all. One of them is going to have to play for their life next week, and Michele already at a disadvantage. If one of them can win like a legit elimination next week, it would like boost their resumes and it would make their seasons worth it.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it just depends on who gets last place as well. I foresee it being one of them. So, any variation of those three going against each other, I don't know who wins because it depends on a lot of things, but I just don't know.
We did also get some stuff teased in the trailer for next week where Bananas and Tori are continuing their feud, and Bananas tries to get in Naya's head a bit, where he asked her, "Where are you on Jordan's totem pole?" type stuff. Where are you in his list? And that's a really good question to be asking because Jordan has Tori, he has Laurel, he has this new connection with Rachel. It seems like him and Michele are talking even more. So Naya, who I mean, they were going to be on Ride or Dies. They were each other's number one on All Stars 3. She's been put in a very interesting position where it's like, does Jordan actually have my back? Because if he has like 4 or 5 other people's backs first, that'll make you a target.
Yeah. And I almost said, well, she's got to be his number two, but no, he's thinking long term. Like, you did make me just think. I wish she had been on Ride or Dies with him instead of Anissa, and she could have been with her friend. But whatever. It's a great point on Banana's end, but I think it falls flat when you realize that he just put you into elimination. Like, you're not high on his totem pole either.
That is so bananas, though, to vote someone into elimination and then to try and manipulate them against someone. And if you can successfully do it, like, I will say Naya is probably someone you can convince of that.
True.
Anything else we got to add for this episode?
No. 1% of me's Team Tori.
I'm putting myself at a solid, like, 13% right now. I'm like, I mean, I don't, actually, I'm so invested. So I'm not invested in her winning or like Team Tori, but I'm very invested in this Tori Bananas rivalry.
Yeah.
For this season, I think if they come back next season, it'll be fake and contrived and artificial. But right now, what we're seeing in the moment, it's some good TV.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you to everyone for listening to us. Thank you for my upstairs neighbor for vacuuming right now, apparently. Everyone have a great week. Zoe will be back with us next week. We'll be here to recap episode 11, male elimination or women's elimination day. Subscribe to us on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever you get the podcast. Really thank you everyone for listening.
See ya.